Hey everybody, this is Niclas Huschenbeth and welcome to my new series which is called Chess Endgame Basics. And in this series I would just like to show you some really important endgame positions which I think can really make the difference for you between a loss and a draw, or maybe a draw and a win. And I will just show you some elementary important stuff which you will come across often in your own games, I believe. And today I would like to start with how to mate with knight and bishop alone against the king. And I've gotten several requests to do this, and I think it's a really important technique to know, because it just sucks if you play a really good game and then you end up in this endgame. You know it's winning, but you don't know how to. So let's go ahead and I will show you how it's done. Alright, so what we got on the board here is kind of what I found the worst setup for white to start this endgame. I mean, you can see all the pieces in the corner, the king here opposing the other king, and I will now show you first how to get the king to the edge of the board, which shouldn't be that difficult. But yeah, this is the first thing you have to know. In order to mate the black king or the opponent's king, you want to get the king to the edge of the board, or more specifically in the corner of your bishop's color. So in this case we have a dark squared bishop. That means we want to get the king either to a1 or to h8. And this makes sense because in the corner the king has the least amount of squares, right? He only has 3 squares to go, and we just need to make sure to block these 3 squares and give him a check, and then it's checkmate. Alright, so let's go ahead and drive the king to the corner of the board. So bishop f2, first of all, this is a really common technique to this kind of constellation here with the king and the bishop, and you can see now the king has no other choice but to retreat to the next closest rank, because these 2 squares are covered. So, and we will see this several times in this video, this technique to drive the king backwards. King e2, king e4, and again same technique. King d5, king has to retreat one more, king d3, king e5, and now another very common setup I would like you to remember. You can see how the knight and the bishop kind of form an alliance and take squares away. The knight takes the light squares away, and obviously the dark squared bishop takes the dark squares away, and we will see this also several times. It's also something you can remember. You can kind of see the knight and the bishop are 2 squares away from each other, and in this way they take away a maximum amount of squares. King d5, again same technique here, bishop d4, king e6, king c4, and if you're the one who is playing with the king, then you want to get away from the corner of your opponent's bishop. So what we'll see here, black is trying to get his king to this corner, and he's trying to stay away from the a1 or h8 corner. But in the end we will get him here sooner or later. So now knight f5 check, king e6, knight e3, again the knight is covering these squares, and king d6 again, and king b5, and it was important to bring the knight over here because now this square is also covered, and again it's kind of a cage. The king doesn't get out. Alright, king c7, king c5, and here I was looking at 2 different moves which seem to be natural for me. The main move we will be looking at is king b7, but just to give you an idea what happens after king d7, which is also maybe reasonable. And then bishop e5, again we have this kind of constellation with bishop and knight, king e6 and king d4, and this bishop here on e5 is just super strong, taking away so many squares, and it's just a matter of time here. And we will actually come back to a rising position later, and here I think it's a very nice maneuver. Again, knight g2, and the knight comes to f4, and the cage of the king is just getting tighter and tighter. King e7, king c6, king d8, knight d5, and here we will reach a position we will soon encounter again, and we have him on the edge of the board, and now we just need to drive him into a corner, and we will get back to his position just in a moment. So let's go back here. Let's say black is still trying to get to the light squared corner of the board, plays king b7, and now the knight is coming, knight d5, king a7, king c6 check, king b8, and now we will come to kind of the standard position here. This is what you will see in many textbooks. This kind of starting position, and from here it's a very simple technique, but you need to know how it's done. And it's called the W Manoeuvre, and W is referring to the knight, because the knight we'll see will perform this maneuver, and this, as you can clearly see, is a W. So let's see how exactly this turns out. So we stopped here, and now I told you we want to get this king to this corner, the same color as our bishop. Right now it's in the wrong corner, so let's drive the king over here, and first of all we take away this square, so the king has to go to d8. And now the knight is performing the maneuver. Knight d5, king e8, king wants to get out, but it's not going to happen. This is maybe the most important moment here, that you realize that for one moment it looks like the king is going to get out, but he is not. Again, knight e7, just following this W maneuver. Now king f6, and for one moment it looks like the king is about to escape, go to g5, but now just in time we close the cage again, play bishop to e3, and you can see knight and bishop are just defending all the important squares, and black has to retreat. King f7, and now take away more squares, bishop d4. And now the king, he doesn't have any other choice, he has to go back to the edge of the board. King e8, and now we got him again, king e6. King d8, and we just continue like we did before, taking away this square again, so king further is pushed to the h8 square. Knight f5, still following the W maneuver. King e8, again W maneuver, check, and king g8 is forced. King g6, and now we got him almost in the corner already. I mean, he's there. So now we just have to finish it up. Bishop d6, king g8, and now it's very simple. Now you want to get your knight to h6, okay, in order to take away the square on g8, and then deliver checkmate with the bishop on the long diagonal. So let's see how it works out. So we have to be one more time careful to not play knight h6 now, because it would be stalemate, right? The king doesn't have a square to move, so we first just play a waiting move. And it's also sometimes a thing you can remember. In some cases, just useful to play a waiting move, so it's black's turn again. And now king g8, and now we give the check, and it's checkmate. Alright, let's go back and just look at a few different options, but in general it's always the same technique. So let's go back here. We looked at what happens if the king tries to escape with king f7. He could also go back, but it is the same thing, knight e7, and we actually pretty much reached the same position already. We had just seen that, so I don't think I have to show that again. Are there any other options? I mean, it really always turns out to be more or less the same thing. What if black plays the king to g7 here? And again, important, don't let the king out. Play the bishop back to e3, taking away this square on h6. King f6, and now this is one of the cases where you just need to make a waiting move. Just bishop d2, and now we kind of have the same thing again here, bishop c3, and we have just seen that already. I'll just show you again. Very simple. Knight f5, the knight comes over. Now we play a waiting move. Yeah, that's maybe one important thing. You don't want to play your king over yet, because now black goes back and you have to play the king back to e6 again to prevent black from playing king d7. So just one waiting move, and now if the king goes back to e8, then again knight g7, and if king goes to g8, then we're happy too, because we got him in the right corner here. Knight g7, and we'll see the same thing again here, knight f5, king h8, one waiting move, always make sure not to stalemate your opponent, and then it is checkmate. Alright, let's see if I left anything out. What happens if black plays the king to g7 in this position? But it's really, I mean, we have seen it several times now. It's really not that different. Again, the knight is performing this W and you don't allow the king to get out, and that's it pretty much. Alright, so what to keep in mind? For one thing, you need to know where to get the king, and the king should always be driven in the corner of your bishop's color. So in this case, the dark square. And then if you have him at the edge of the board, then you can perform this W maneuver. And it usually starts at C7 and then all the way to G7, and it's just a very easy way to remember what you have to do. And then it's really not that difficult if you know what to do. So if you would like to practice it, I would recommend you playing against a friend. Maybe give yourself 3 or 5 minutes, whatever you feel comfortable with, or play against a computer, that works too. And if you would like to see the fastest win in any position with knight, bishop and king, then you can go to the Shredder table basis. I'll put the link in the description, and there you can set up any position with 6 pieces or less, and it will show you the fastest way to win and how many moves it takes. Alright, let me know if you have any questions about this. I hope that helped, and I'll see you next time. Bye.